All right, I
Yes,
see some.
we can hear you.
Good.
Fly.
All right, so let's mute our phones if we can. And if not, Anya, I may have you mute everyone. Background.
Tell me how you like the cabbage.
So Ashley and Ron, if you're coming off mute, you may have to hit *6 or mute yourselves. Same with Zach. So good afternoon. My name is Derek Johnson. Really excited, and it's a pleasure as well as an honor to be here today to talk to you and host this session, specifically an organization that I've become very fond of, and that is SBP. Today we're going to talk to you about a topic that's worthy of discussion. It's relevant and probably on many of our minds. Has been for some time, but I think that we look at where we are today, and it's has sort of resurfaced as a topic, and that is our ability to identify and address systemic racism as well as biases. But specifically, we're going to walk you through today SBP's journey to becoming a permanently anti-racist organization. Today, there are a myriad of instances that are being highlighted. We might ask ourselves, is it that racism is more prevalent today? Are these biases more prevalent? Or is it just that they're more pronounced? Is it that inequities are more severe? Or is it just that they're more visible? I would put forth that there's a myriad of forces at play. Technology, connectedness, social and racial tension, as well as dividedness. But on the flip side, I think those that could be pulling us apart, those same instances could be pulling us together, coupled with that technology, this connectedness, but also a desire to make the world a better place. And so I think it's very timely for us to have these discussions. It's at the forefront of many of our minds, organizations as well as personally. So today, we'll talk specifically about SBP, and their mission is to prevent, survivors of, major disasters from reaching their breaking point by shrinking the time between disaster and recovery. And a lot of this is done by identifying and addressing inequities, which I think is timely. One is because of the organization, but also the inequities that are probably existing in the marketplace today. I'm a board member as a part of SBP, but also the president of UPS's South Atlantic District. So I want to introduce myself, but also to introduce the panelists that will be joining us today. I have Ashley Thompson. Ashley is an SBP staff, currently the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program Coordinator for SBP out of New Orleans, and has also served 2 terms as an AmeriCorps member. I have Ron Guerrier, who's also a board member, serves as the State of Illinois' Chief Information Officer in Security of Department of Innovation Technology, and was appointed by the Illinois Governor Pritzker in these roles in March of 2019. Ron also brings 20 years of experience managing technology in the private sector and has served as a CIO for several multi-billion-dollar businesses since 2012. And last but not, and final, I'll say Zach Rosenberg, who is the co-founder and CEO of SBP, which began in 2006 after Hurricane Katrina. He's played a critical role in directing and advising local and state government officials to help create long-term recovery programs. You'll learn more about SBP if you haven't. I think there was some information that was sent out beforehand to allow you to learn about SBP and the journey that we are on. I'll start off today, and I'll open it up to our panelists. We're going to talk on areas that I think are of interest to us. And I'll open it up to the panel, starting with you, Ashley. What is diversity? It's a topic, it's a word that's thrown out. It has been for quite some time. But what is diversity? What does it mean to you? And we'll also elaborate on the definition of inclusion, as those terms are used but may not be synonyms, but definitely are used in conjunction with each other, and get a little bit of an explanation of that from you, if you don't mind.
Okay, so diversity for me is simply just everyone's different and unique differences, whether it's our racial differences, our professional backgrounds, our religious beliefs, where we have gone to school, where our families are from, our sexual orientation, or simply just our life experiences. And to me, that just merely means someone recognizing and understanding and being respectful of those differences in others without passing judgment. And the inclusion part of it would mean to me just making them feel welcome in any environment despite those differences. They should feel comfortable and, and accepted and merely welcomed no matter where they are.
Ron, do you care to elaborate?
Yeah, so I'm the type when I'm on panels, I try not to say exactly what the person said before me, especially when it's spot on. So Ashley, spot on. What I'll do is I'll add to it a little bit. I'll say also, for me, diversity is diversity within cultures is also tremendous. So I'm a Black man, but my parents are from Haiti. And so there's diversity within the Black culture, just like there's diversity within the Asian culture, within even the white culture. So I think diversity, there's macro diversity, and again, there's micro diversity. That's kind of how I started seeing it. And then Derek, I haven't updated you yet, but Zach knows. I left the state of Illinois a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and now I'm the global CIO for HP Hewlett Packard. So that's why I'm wearing the reason I bring that up is now I have a team of well over 4,000 people globally, where I got to make sure that I also focus on the diversity of who they are, where they're from, who they love, who they pray. Just bring everyone together and get the best of kind of what everyone has to offer. And then again, the inclusion part is really making people feel comfortable. And again, I'm going to use the analogy, ask them to the party is one thing, but having them actually dance with you and understand how they dance and finding the best of everyone. So spot on, Ashley. I'll leave it at that.
Well, let me add by saying congratulations. Timely information to know, but I definitely do want to say congratulations. Let me elaborate a little bit on the diversity as well as the inclusion side. I think oftentimes in a business setting, when we think about diversity, there's oftentimes pressures in organizations to deal with homogeneity, speed of decision making. Someone who thinks like me, operates like me, oftentimes we can work well together. Many instances, they can finish the sentence before I can. And we look at that as, wow, we're moving at the speed of business, not to use a term that UPS had coined, but we're moving quickly. We're making decisions fast, and we're a rapid fire. How do you combat that as we think about diversity versus the benefits that could be perceived of this homogeneity? Ron, I'll kick that over to you.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if you were asking that too. So for me, as you asked that question, there's this concept of groupthink. I think everyone understands the concept of groupthink. If everyone really thinks that the only way to proceed, let's just play, and I'm sorry for the football analogy, but it's football season, why not? If everyone on my team thinks the only way I could advance the ball is by running the ball, and if you're a Chicago Bears fan like I am, for 100 years, that's all we've done, right? There are other ways to advance the ball. How about throwing the ball? How about there's different ways to approach a challenge? And if when you really get locked into groupthink, you're approaching one way, you're only going to advance so much. And the other thing I'll say from a competitive perspective, if your competitors know that you're really good at doing it one way and one way only, and your approaches are not diverse, they'll understand those opportunities and they'll find other ways to advance beyond you. They'll learn how to throw the bomb. They'll learn how to do different things. So for me, it's try to avoid the groupthink. And the last thing I'll say to that is, and I'll give you the visual, the lemmings. I surround myself with people who definitely are my sparring partners. I want them to, during practice, we want to make sure practice is very hard. Because by the time game time comes up, again, sorry for the analogy, I want us to be prepared, right? And so the diversity of thought in that room is very important, because when we get out there to kind of do what we have to do, we better think of all angles, and diversity provides us that opportunity.
Thank you. And so another question that I have here for us is that, if we look at our individual experiences, as well as recent events, how has this shaped or influenced your awareness around diversity and inclusion and its values to organizations? Zach, if you don't mind, I'd like for you to answer that first or lead us off.
Sure, thanks, Derek. And thanks everybody for participating in such an important discussion. Derek, thanks for leading it. SPP for 14 years has seen ourselves as a good, efficient group. We execute on our mission, we achieve our goals. We have not met the moral and competitive and justice-driven objectives of diversity, however. And so I want to be clear that while the SPP team folks is presenting, we're not perfect. Arguably, we're late, not even arguably, in many ways, we're late to the party. Our core has been diverse, to be sure, always has been. It's been a great strength, but our management and leadership team has not been. And so we come to you, I guess, vulnerable and on the journey, but trying to model, I guess, that it's so important, it's worth being uncomfortable about. In terms of competing around diversity, I'll play on, Ron's analogy. So step one is inviting people to the dance. Step two is dancing with them. But step three is probably having your partner lead and valuing where they want to go on the dance floor. And on one hand, you can see that as giving up control. On the other hand, you can see it as leading you to where you need to go. And so SPP is an organization that serves people. We are a client-centered organization. We have clients all across the country. And it's a fact that it's important for our clients to see people who look like them at every level of the organization. It's true, our Black clients love our white AmeriCorps members, but there's often a quicker and different and silent sometimes connection when our Black clients see our Black AmeriCorps members or staffers, and then their minds are kind of blown. We've always had a very diverse board when they get to see our Black board members. And so this is where our world has to go. And I think we have to see that this makes us stronger, sharing power, maybe even getting out of the way and having other people lead the dance is the right thing to do. It's not going to be easy. And I really suggest to folks that either the more inner turmoil you're having or some concern or getting pushback, I'd say from the Brene Brown kind of view, the challenge is, or the pushback, whether it's the Frederick Douglass notion of where there is no struggle, there is no progress, we got to have progress. So if we're struggling, we're on the right path. Or the Brene Brown notion of pain and tension are the admissions ticket to impact. So Derek, I don't know if that answered your question. Feel free to obviously push back if I missed it.
No, I think it's good. I would want to, let me elaborate a little bit, or have you really elaborate, and that is, I think for many, the things that we will say today will resonate. And I say today in the proverbial sort of sense, right? But are there recently, let's say over the course of SPP's journey, that has helped influence this thought around diversity? Black AmeriCorps members, a racially diverse board, and the impact that has that changed or evolved over the course of time, and what may have influenced that?
So it would be a lie and dishonest for me to say that the murder of George Floyd wasn't a driver into our evolved and new commitment. It would just be dishonest. I think we've probably always known it was the right thing, but allowed ourselves to get distracted by other issues, or thought simply being good people was enough and focus. I mean, candidly, Derek and Ron, Ashley, you guys know me, we talk about executing. We're executing our mission. And that was kind of an excuse to not focus on working on the organization. It became crystal clear after George Floyd was murdered, for a number of reasons, that becoming an anti-racist organization was something not just that we had to do, but we had to be. It had to be part of our DNA. And it had to be, the least of which is because for a sign of the times, like table stakes. Everyone has to do it. You're going to have to either, and frankly, from a business perspective, you either do it fast and authentically and maybe stumble or struggle, or you do it slow and it looks inauthentic. That's the least reason to do it, but it's true. The other reason, to honor our team members and to honor our clients, we had to take a step back and examine, and we're still doing it, what our relationship is with privilege and structured white supremacy and institutionalized racism. for all three of those reasons. But at the end of the day, it's going to make us, and already has made us better at our business. And for all kind of the quants, folks who are quants out there, the data actually shows that racially and otherwise diverse teams do better, like math.
No, I appreciate that. No, I think I agree wholeheartedly. Ron or Ashley, your thoughts? Ashley, I'll lean on you, and you have to come off mute. There you go.
Okay, there it is.
So recent experiences, both individually or broadly, that have impacted or influenced awareness of diversity and inclusion.
I'm not gonna say it brought awareness. I mean, for me, diversity has always been a part of my everyday life. I look for it everywhere that I go. I think it may have heightened my awareness. It has made me more aware, more cautious. I certainly look for it more now when when I'm in the workplace. I think it should be more easily recognized in some organizations. I know Zach kind of mentioned where we fall short at SBP, and we have a lot of Black board members, but I think it should start from the bottom and go all the way up to the top. The people that we see every day within the organization don't necessarily get to see the board all the time. So I think they should see that. I think the diversity should be easily and openly recognizable, even from the bottom, even like he mentioned, when the client meets the AmeriCorps member for the first time, because those are the people at the bottom and they don't see the board. They don't see that there's huge diversity in the board. All they see is sometimes the project leads, the project managers, and they meet the AmeriCorps members and people at the bottom. So they need to be able to see it from the bottom all the way up to the top.
Okay. Hey, Ron, I'm going to go off script just a little bit. And, as we think about large organizations, we think about SBP and the impact that they have. How do you feel we've been able to respond in this, during this time? What you've seen, the type of interactions that we've had, as well as with Zach and the team, how have we responded?
That's a great question. The thing is, and I'm trying to keep a balanced perspective and an answer to this, and that yes, the unfortunate death of a man being kneeled on for over 8 minutes just shook everyone up. Whether you're white, pink, blue, purple, I don't care what color you are, it's just wrong. And so what I would say is, how do you respond to this is very important. And this is, again, my opinion, but also kind of my role as a board member. If you go too quick, in my opinion, and you just kind of rush and say, okay, we got to do X, Y, and Z, then to me, it's false, in my opinion. It's like, it's a reaction. And you don't want it to be a reaction. You want it to be, one, the right thing to do. And the second thing is, okay, how do you do it in a way that it's sustainable? Just by putting one or two other people of color on a board or in management or Latino, that's great for 2 seconds. That's a snapshot. But it's something that's sustainable. So I personally, and I've talked to Zach about this, and other board members, it's got to be a plan. It's got to be something that's sustainable over time. And it's got to be about inclusion. Just like we were just talking about, having a meeting where we have 136 people on this call right now, talking about something that, yeah, we could argue we should have had this conversation a year ago, 2 years ago, but sorry for the French, shit, we're here now. So what are we going to do about it from this point forward? I think that's really important. And Derek, you're a dad, I'm a dad. We fear for years what's it like when our kids go off and they go out with their friends and stuff like that. See, the rest of the world now kind of has that feeling that we kind of had for years. So the question is, how do you take this feeling and try to find a way to create a world of sympathy and understanding? And another thing I'll quickly say to Zach's approach, which is spot on, what I don't want to do is alienate my white colleagues and my white friends. The last thing I want to say, well, look what you guys have been doing to us for 401 years. That's not going to really fix this issue. It's more about awareness. Let's all come together. We realize this is wrong, right? Flat out. What are we doing as a team, as a group, to address this? And so for me, what I'm seeing with the board and what I'm seeing with Zach's effort and the rest of the team is we are having the dialogue, we're having the conversations, and we're building a sustainable plan to address it. Because the last thing I want is, okay, well, today we hired 3 or 4 people of color in certain areas, check that box, move on. That's not going to fix this issue. It took roughly 400 some years to get here. It's not going to take 40 days to get out of it. It's just not. So I really think that we have to be logical about it. And last thing I'll say as a board member, and to Ashley's point, thank you for bringing that up. Every single time I've gone to a site, so I've been to Houston, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, New York, and Puerto Rico. We actually have family that live in Puerto Rico. We've always gone out, we've talked to individuals, we had sessions, and so we've always had that level of engagement. And it wasn't to kind of demonstrate the diversity of the group, it was to kind of just learn and share ideas with all levels of the organization. So what I do like that I see is there's really no hard hierarchy that I see as a board member within SBP. Everyone wants to just do the right thing, all hands on deck. But Derek, hopefully that answers your question. I just want to make sure that we're doing it in a measured approach that's sustainable, but we don't alienate our friends because we need that advocacy. We can't do it ourselves. We've tried. That has not worked well for us. So let's kind of partner in a different way to move the ball forward.
No, I appreciate it. I definitely do appreciate it. No, thank you very much. And I do agree. I think that the appreciation for what has been done at SBP, but also, I mean, 400 years of sort of injustice or injustices that may exist won't be corrected in 40 days. So the patience as well as the diligence as well as the collaboration is definitely required. Ashley, if you were to look at, and I'll ask you to kind of expose us a little bit. Well, too, I think you can compliment as well as expose. What we've done since the George Floyd murder and how we've reacted and responded, the good and the bad, of what we've done right and what we could have done better.
I'm gonna piggyback a little bit on what Ron said. I think SBP was very responsive, but I think we were more reactive when we should have been proactive. Some of the stuff that we're doing now should have already been in place prior to this. But you know, in several areas, I do feel like SBP missed the mark in a lot of areas of diversity. However, they have openly recognized those mistakes and they're listening to the concerns and the idea of the staff members and the, you know, and the AmeriCorps members, and making it their mission to correct those mistakes and to continue to make it a core value in what we do every day at SBP, which is applaudable. SBP is currently not as diverse as I would like to see as a staff member, because I am a member of the minority group. However, I've never felt out of place at SBP. Let me say that I've never felt like I didn't belong. I never felt like I wouldn't be picked or chosen for some type of advancement or some type of you know, promotion that I may have qualified for. So although I feel like they can improve in a lot of areas, I've never felt like I didn't belong there. Even if my time as an AmeriCorps member as well as now as a staff member, I've never felt like that was not a place for me because it lacked diversity.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. And I do think that many, now you're younger than I am, but I think we've had instances in the past where this will pop up as a topic. We can go back to Rodney King or other types of injustices that may have happened, and it happened in probably a more social or outside of a work setting, and then bringing it into the workplace. And so I think that as this has, to your point, that there are probably things that we could have done earlier. I do appreciate the responsiveness that SBP has had, and glad to be a part of those conversations with the three of you as well as Zach and the rest of the staff. So thank you for that. A question that I'll kind of pose out to the group, and that is this topic around, you know, if you start talking about race, religion, politics, are typically forbidden at work. I mean, we've been taught in our academic as well as professional careers to stay away from these topics. How have you responded in being able to bring these conversations into the workplace to make SBP better? Zach, I'll turn to you for that first.
Yeah, so we did a few things, and without a doubt, we were reactive. And so maybe Derek, would it be okay to run through the list of things that we did because it sort of impacts how we talk about it in the workplace. So pretty quickly, we wrote a letter to all our team, not a public letter like everybody was doing but to our team. We wanted to communicate to our team. And really, the letter was intended, and I'm happy to share it with anyone if you'd like to see. It was intended to be written to the Black team members. I mean, it was to all staff and all AmeriCorps members, but it was to the Black people on the team. And we talked about what happened, which was a murder. We talked about structured white supremacy, and we affirmed that the lives of Black people matter. And we said we were going to start with doing 5 or 6 things, including a town hall. And it's turning out that we're going to have a series of town hall. Ron and Derek led one. We brought in an epidemiologist, physician, lecturer, kind of just brilliant human being, who led the second town hall with the goal of, and again, it was going to be in a series, but helping us all have a bit of a historical framework, a framework around structure and shared language, which would be really important to further discussions. We decided that, and I'm sharing these things because upon reflection, it's so clearly like tactical reactions. We decided everyone gets a day off a month for the foreseeable future, really a day on, to invest in matters of racial justice as they see fit, and they don't have to tell their boss what they're doing. And we do it in an AmeriCorps compliant way as it relates to AmeriCorps. We created a reading list and a watching list. And then we joined a whole bunch of urban leagues and already have great partnerships with them. That was the beginning. What I've done, and then I had a conversation with a former board member who's a very good friend, who's now the chief diversity officer at Disney. And I asked her and Ron knows her both from SVP and other reasons. I said, hey, Latondra, what do you think about all this? And she was pretty candid. She said, hey, great reactions, but like, what's going to stick? And have you thought about who you are? And she shared that the journey had to evolve to like what would be a deep and kind of painful assessment, both personally and as an organization, to query like, what is our relationship with white supremacy? What is our relationship with structured racism? And how do we spend time taking equity away from that? And so that's a process, and that's a process that many of the leaders are engaged in, and then Latondra is going to lead a discussion across the organization about that. Derek, to answer specifically your question, like how do we talk about it? We had to have some shared language. We also realized we didn't have to be perfect in coming open and ready to listen. I mean, we didn't have to be perfect, but we had to come open. And then we had to, one of SVP's values, and we can share it out after, one of our values is this notion of steering through turbulence. So if you're thinking of a plane, right, sometimes you have to go through the bumpy air to get to the like smooth sailing, to the higher altitude. So you got to steer into and through the turbulence. And sometimes just to get to the other side, you got to go through some more turbulence. And so we talked as a team. Fortunately, we had this value if we were going to have to, with race, steer through turbulence. And so now with my senior team, whenever I meet with them, one of the things we talk about is, what are we doing to talk about race? Are we talking about books we're reading? Are we asking people to talk about what they're thinking about? We don't want to ask our team members how they're spending their day off a month volunteering, but we should talk about how we're spending our time as the senior leaders. So from my role, I have to walk the walk, but then I have to model for other people, have these conversations, and over time, and then I inspect what I expect. I ask my direct reports nationally, hey, tell me about a couple conversations you had. So we could say all this fancy stuff, or I could ask people to do it. It would mean nothing unless I'm doing it myself and following up on it. Still, it's far from imperfect. Still, it's a journey. We got a lot of work to do. We have not done all of the introspection yet, but I guess, Derek, that's probably a longer answer than I should have given, but that's the answer I have. Sorry, Derek.
No, I want you to elaborate. We want to be open. I think as we have these conversations and discussions, the reason we're here today is to share our journey, what it is that you've been able to do, what you seek to accomplish at SBP, so that others can, I think collectively we can learn. I see that there's some conversation and chat that's taking place, and I think there's plenty still for us to learn from others as well. And so I definitely want to use this as a venue for it. One of the things you hit on, though, and I thought was interesting, it kind of plays back to the question I had, which was for so long in our academic and/or professional worlds, we've been probably taught to avoid the discussions around race. And I think that it's interesting as we are here today, where we're teaching ourselves now how to have the discussions about race and inequities and injustice, and how, in order for us to effectively overcome it. So definitely commend you for the efforts that are underway, those that are current, as well as those that are yet to come. As I think through, for you, Ashley, and you may have touched upon this earlier, but I think when you look at an NGO or an employer, what's attractive, or what are you looking for with regards to a company if you put yourself on the outside looking in, what are you looking for in an organization as it represents diversity? What is it that would either draw you in or turn you away? What is it about their approach? What are you looking for in their approach to diversity?
When I walk into an organization, I'm looking to see, like I spoke of before, looking to see diversity from out the gate, at its inception, not so much as reacting to an event that may have brought awareness to it, but where I can see someone look like me in leadership, someone I can see look like me at the bottom, in the middle, as well as at the top. I also would like to see a permanent shift, or a permanent position of diversity as far as SBP is concerned. I know we're doing a lot of talking, we're doing a lot of discussing, we have a lot planned, and I think I mentioned this to Zach. I'm looking to see the permanent changes at SBP in diversity. I'm hoping to one day walk in the building and the diversity is openly recognizable. I think I used that term again, where it's not hidden. It's not only in the board. It's not only if you ask about it or if it's being discussed. I want to be able to walk into that organization and not just have a discussion about it, but for me to be able to see it and for it to be acknowledged on a daily basis. I'm looking for more diversity in leadership. I would like to see someone that looks like me sitting in the offices of managers and directors. I'm looking to see diversity as a part of our onboarding, whether it's for the AmeriCorps members or it's for the staff, and make it a part of the training process for both.
Hey, so one area that you did not mention, and I wanted to elaborate, but what about the statement of what diversity means as an organization? Because I think we saw right after this event, my company and probably several others put out statements. And I think as I listened to you, Ashley, in your response, it was, you really aren't focused on the statement, but the action.
Correct. I think the statement is completely unnecessary if there won't be any action behind it. Sometimes a statement can be looked at as the organization just wants to get ahead of it or get in front of it to make it seem as though things are one way when it's actually not. I think putting your boots on the ground and actually doing something about it is much more recognizable than you putting out a statement. A statement is just that. It can be a statement, but then there's no movement behind it.
Good. Hey, Ron, as a board member looking at an NGO, SBP or otherwise, what is it that you look at with regards to diversity and the expectation that you would have of an organization that you either represent or are part of.
There's a lot of intersections with what Ashley stated, and I can actually use my leap from state government reporting to the gov to where I'm at today as a great example of that. So after leaving healthcare, I had an opportunity to stay with healthcare, and I decided, okay, I'm gonna do some stuff in public service. And Zach knows the story, and I said, okay, I'm gonna go back to my home state. I'm gonna make a change, promote STEM education, STEAM education, be on the cabinet, just be that person. And I was inspired, honestly, by a lot of the work that SBP does. But then as I started pivoting back into the private sector, I'm like, okay, when I finally go back to private sector, because I was gonna go back, what am I looking for? Like, what's my next chapter? I'm at a point right now where my son's a sophomore in college, daughter's final year in college. I'm at that next really major chapter where I can be a little bit more picky where I go, as opposed to running to the dollar, right? I think everyone understands that world. And so I wanted to make sure I'm working for an organization that actually goes beyond the statement, as Ashley says, and actually puts the work in to try to change the world, acknowledging they're not perfect. And I don't think if a human comes up to you and says, yeah, we got it down pat, they're lying to you, right? I don't have it, no one has it. Like, I've never been able to dunk since sophomore year in college. I'll never do it again. I know that, I'm limited. But at the end of the day, I wanna make sure that the organization is really backing it with action. And here's a couple examples. So when I started looking, how I got this job was not through your normal headhunter. What really literally just happened was I read a book where Steve Jobs was looking for a job back when he was 13, like the founder of Apple. He sends a mail to Bill Hewitt from Hewlett Packard and says, hey, one day I'd love to work for your company. And Bill Hewitt, he responded, said, yes, one day I'd love for you to join. And Steve Jobs did join. And Steve Jobs had the idea of a PC while he was working at HP. HP wasn't into PCs, they were into printers. They said, great idea, we'll back it, but we're not gonna get into PCs. IBM at the time dominated that space. And I was just wondering, I was like, so this Steve Jobs guy, clearly a brilliant guy, I decided to do the same thing. I sent an email to Enrique Lores, but I did it because I saw all the stuff HP was doing to address not only George Floyd, they had a history of addressing things before that incident. So I started doing more research on them. And one quick example is they have something called Homeboy Industries in LA, which I actually worked with when I lived in LA. And it's a recycling center, and it helps people who are out of incarceration have a job, have some meaningful work, and they get back into society. And HP completely sponsored that. They sponsor recycling centers in my parents' home country of Haiti. They want to expand that in Sri Lanka and in Africa. Like, this company not only talks the game, they believe in it. Your print cartridge, not a sales pitch, please. Your print cartridge is 30% recycled material. Your laptops by 2025 would be half recycled material. And it comes at a cost to them, but it's the right thing to do. So doubling down on Ashley's statement, it is not just a statement that we are going to be more diverse and inclusive. It is, what are you doing on the back end? Like, who do you associate yourself with? Do you support other brands that are not as inclusive? So for me, it's that ecosystem that I'm joining that really draws me to that organization. The board at SBP, one of the reasons is I was the CIO at Farmers at the time, and I saw the great work, and I saw the diversity in the board. And honestly, Zach has a very, very genuine approach of how he does things. And I know that when he and the team wants to get something done, they'll get it done. But they do it from a, how do I put it? I don't want to get sentimental or anything, but they do it from a very good place. It's not an academic, well, just because everyone else is doing it. So again, I double down on everything Ashley says, and I'm a little further along in my career, but I still galvanize and kind of focus on the same things that she talked of. It is the action behind the words. What are you doing beyond that? And more importantly, and I said this before and I'll say it again, the inclusion is also the inclusion of those who have not gone through the struggle. Don't make them guilt them into it, but explain to them the lens that we're going through. We all want the same things. We want our kids to be safe. We want them more successful than us. We want them to be able to walk and get some Skittles and come home, and a community member not think that they're up to no good. These are basic human needs, right? And that's all we're looking for. And that's what, to me, is equity, giving everyone a fair shot. Now, different people will take it a different way, right? They're gonna push harder or they're gonna slack off, but at least let's try to even the playing fields, right? So for me, that's what I look for. And again, it's action, 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 because words, after so many centuries and decades, don't have much weight, to be honest with you. It is really the actions behind it. So hopefully I answered your question, Derek.
Very much so, very much so. I appreciate it both. Thank you, Ashley, as well as Ron. A question that I'm going to take off of the chat here, and Zach, this is directed at you. The question is coming from Maureen Eccleston. I'm curious to know how you're entwining being an anti-racist organization with mission and execution. Entwining so that it's not an add-on, but the mission is but it's essential to the mission. Can you talk about that in some regards? And so let me restate, and that is curious about how you're entwining being an anti-racist organization with mission execution. Entwining it such that it's not an add-on to the mission, but an essential part of it.
Yeah, I think there's two ways that we're doing it. First of all, you know, business is all, and in the nonprofit world, it's business, right? We're all about executing. So the first thing is alignment. And so as an organization, we had to come to the understanding that being diverse is important. It's important for our thought and our ability to execute, and it's important for our clients. And so step one is to educate and align on why it's important. It's important not for fundraising, it's important not for the public view, it's important to execute our mission. It's part of what we have to do to best execute our mission. Once we aligned on those two things, it has to be part of every conversation. It has to be part of what we do. It has to be part of the way we hire, the way we promote, the lens on our work. I'll give you just a couple recent examples, and this wasn't in our plan, or we haven't talked about it terribly publicly, but it's just something we do. So we looked at our work, and a big piece of our work is either rebuilding houses for folks after disaster has hit, or obviating or preventing the need for the houses to be rebuilt. And so we did some research around this, and we found out, and so we took the lens of racial equity and justice and historical instances of institutionalized racism, and we applied that to the work that we do. So none of it, I guess, to the question, Maureen, was mission creep. Our intention wasn't to do something else, but let's apply that lens to the work as we're doing it. And we came to understand something that I guess we peripherally knew, but until we like examined it under the microscope, whatever the thing is, the enlarger glass. I know there, what's it? It doesn't matter what it's called. We'll figure it out later. Magnifying glass. Until we really looked at it through that, we understood it would tell us how to do our work better. So we came to understand something we already knew, anecdotally, or kind of probably understood, that across all income levels, this is very interesting, across all income levels, equity in a home plays a bigger percentage of total family net worth for Black families than it does for white families. So not at 1 or 2 or 3 or at the bottom or at the top, across all income levels, the equity in a home plays a bigger percentage of total net worth. And for folks at the lower economic levels, they can be neutral or positive net worth. And as soon as disasters hit, right, as soon as disasters hit, they go from positive net worth, or perhaps family wealth, it's a family home with no note that had been passed on for generations, it's the only source of equity, to negative or a massive hit to the net worth. Understanding that our work is directly tied to that led to a greater sense of urgency and led to new ways of thinking about some of the upstream solutions that we have in terms of doing all we can do to quickly recover the net worth for folks. In other words, get their houses rebuilt as fast as possible. But also it led to an increased impetus to fortify people earlier on so that the net worth wouldn't take that loss. Because we know, and there's all the other stuff we know, in terms of the zip code that you live in, how it pertains to life expectancy and opportunities, how having a home, owning a home that you can have, just period, that lets you leverage other resources to get a better car, to get a better job, to send your kids to college. So we understood it was really, Maureen, it didn't change the mission at all, but looking at the work through a lens of racial equity really was helpful. I don't know if that answers your question, but, oh, there you are. There's Maureen. Sorry.
So I would say I think it does. Let me elaborate a little bit, or better yet, ask you, Zach, to elaborate. Where members of the community here are asking if there's explicit examples or concrete examples where we've had to come up with new policies. You spoke of one with regards to the Day of Volunteerism. I think I see here that Anya responded to the group as a whole with regards to urban leagues and mentoring and town halls that we've done. But as it relates to any type of policies we put in place, hiring, commitments to diversity and inclusion, if there's other things that we've done that are concrete that we could make our listeners aware of.
Yeah, so with hiring, first of all, we had to, again, it's alignment, and our team had to align that it's an excuse, it's BS, it's just not true that in any field there's not qualified Black or other minority candidates. So we had to align on understanding. We had to take an excuse off the table, and that was really the first step. What it turns out it is, you got to recruit, and you got to be patient, and you can't settle. And so there's no magic pill that you could say, like, I'm going to find the pool of Black people or of exceptional Black people. There's no magic pill that we could find. If anyone has it, let me know. But we haven't found that yet. What we did have to do, though, is slow the hiring. And for the jobs that we're hiring for, not making a decision until we have at least one qualified person of color in the final. It's not a slate for us, but in the final hiring. And it's working. It's simply not snapping at the first highly qualified white person, but waiting until we have a pool of qualified candidates that are diverse is working. And of the, I think, 6 hires we've made since, 2 are African-American, 2 are Latino, 2 are Caucasian. And so we're the same group. By no means, we certainly haven't lowered the quality. I think we've increased the quality of the people. And then I'm convinced that that's going to beget, because some of these new folks of color are in a way the frontier. I mean, it's not that we don't have any Black people, but we're not, and it's not that we're inconsistent with the percentage in our country, but in management, we're way off. And in staff, we don't, at the percentage of our clients, look like our people. So as we start bringing in more people of color, A, our internal network is going to change, and B, we're going to be more appealing for other people.
Hey, so in the interest of time, we're at 3:50, and this is a very rich and robust topic that I'm sure that we could go on for some time. I do want to give each of you an opportunity to make some statements here. I'll read through some of the comments that we have here, questions that are being asked. But for each, and I'll start with you, Ron, let's talk about what's going on within SBP. We talked about the efforts that are in place. And I think you may have said something about this earlier, but what do we need to do to ensure that our efforts are lasting and ongoing, they're impactful, that we're making a difference, and therefore potentially measurable? We got to make sure that this is sustainable, and I think it was the word that you used earlier, that the statements that we put out, I say we being organizations can put out, may not have the right type of impact, or they're lasting in nature, and they're truly driving results. As you look at SBP, what is it that we need to do, or what are you proposing that organizations need to do to make sure that their efforts today are ongoing, they're lasting, they're impactful, and potentially measurable?
Yeah, let me call myself out to Betty Jo's question here.
Okay.
Let me put on my glasses so I don't mangle it. But I think it's a great question, Betty Jo. We have not, I just want to be very clear, there are consultants that you can hire who will come in and look soup to nuts across everything that you're doing, from dress code to looking at comp to look at position descriptions. We have not done that at this point. I think it's a great thing to do. And it may be wrong that we haven't done it, but I don't want to perpetrate that we're perfect and we're at the front end of everything. Betty Jo, I appreciate you kind of putting it out there. Those are things that we haven't done. We've internally looked at comp, and our comp is appropriate indeed. I don't know if I can say this, but we recently elevated a hire. We had, I don't know, Derek, tell me if I'm not supposed to say this, but it was yeah, I'll say this. And if it's a HR matter, I screwed up, but I'm not telling you anyone's names. So we had 2 peers coming in, and the Caucasian peer negotiated for a higher salary. What we subsequently did, and their experience was roughly the same. After just the way the negotiations occurred, we finished with the black guy first, and then we offered to the white person after. Or we negotiated with the white person after. The white person asked for more money. We decided it was the right thing to give it to her. So we subsequently increased the compensation after we had a hiring amount or salary figure for the African-American colleague, because they were peers, and we thought you can't have 2 people in more or less lateral positions at different compensation bases. But we have not, Betty Jo, brought anyone in. In terms of recruitment, as Gary Matthews is asking, we are targeting HBCUs, we're targeting associations and professional associations with partnered. Fannie Mae has an entity called Future Housing Leaders of America. And I see some people are nodding. And so we're an official Future Housing Leader of America partnership. And so we have people who are working on HBCU and other traditionally African-American sources of people. And we also changed the way that we look at our data, because we were looking at our data the wrong way. We were skewed because we have a Puerto Rico office that's staffed entirely by Puerto Rican people, and the applicants were Puerto Rican. So we were misreading our applicant pool as doing better in terms of minority applicants because they were, so we're looking at it in a way that takes that out. So those are some detailed things that we're doing, but it all starts with the culture, I think, and a little bit of a lens of not being perfect and letting someone like Betty Jo or Gary, or creating a climate where you don't have to be perfect, but you always have to listen and consider.
Hey, Zach.
Yes, sir.
I want to let you know that we are probably about to get closed out
of
our session. So I want to say, one, thank you, Zach, for, as well as Ron, Ashley, thank you. But for those that were on the call with us, thank you. Rich discussion, lots to be learned from the questions that were asked. I think there's some things that we as SPP continue to think about and will continue to do. What I want to make certain, though, is that there are questions that you may have. I think the presentation that Zach put forth has his contact information, and there are ways in which you can get in touch with us as SPP. But this is the initial steps of a journey. 400 years, trying to correct it in 40 days, as Ron mentioned earlier, is not going to happen. But along the way, we have continued to have discussions with the board, the current management staff, as well as the employees of SPP, as we continue to sort of pave this path to make sure that we fight inequities or racism, systemic racism within the organization. So thank you all for your time, your participation, the feedback, the candor. I definitely appreciate that. Ron, Ashley, and Zach, as always, thank you very much for your time today. With that, I'll conclude the call.
Eric, thank you. Ron, thanks. Ashley, thanks. I'll see you guys.
Be safe, everyone.